The night my roommate spilled red wine down the front of my white shirt, she didn't gasp. She didn't apologize. She looked me dead in the eye, her mouth curving like she'd just won a bet I didn't know we were playing, and said, "Guess you'll have to take it off." That was the moment my entire apartment went quiet. Not because people were shocked by the wine. Accidents happened. Cheap glasses tipped. Elbows had opinions, but Tessa Morgan had said it slowly, with one hand still wrapped around the stem of her glass, her brown eyes daring me to either laugh it off or finally admit the truth. And the truth was inconvenient. I wanted her. Badly. My name is Caleb Hayes. I was 25, worked as a junior architect at a firm that specialized in making expensive coffee shops look like old factories. And I had spent the last 8 months pretending my roommate was just my roommate. Tessa was 24, a freelance photographer with a talent for making ordinary people look like they had secrets worth keeping. She moved into my spare room after my former roommate got engaged and abandoned me for a townhouse, a golden retriever, and conversations about backsplash tile. The arrangement was supposed to be simple: split rent, share groceries when convenient, no drama, and absolutely no attraction. That last rule was mine, though I never said it out loud because saying, "Please don't be beautiful in my kitchen at 7:12 every morning while making toast in fuzzy socks," felt like a strange thing to put in a roommate agreement. Tessa didn't make it easy. She sang badly when she edited photos. She left camera batteries charging in outlets I needed. She labeled her almond milk with threatening notes like, "Touch this and I'll know." She wore oversized sweatshirts around the apartment and somehow made them more dangerous than any little black dress. She also noticed things. If I came home quiet, she'd toss me a clementine without asking questions. If I worked too late, she'd leave pasta in a container with a sticky note that said, "Architects need carbs or buildings collapse." If I laughed at something on my phone, she'd glance over like she was glad the sound still existed. I told myself that didn't mean anything. I had reasons. A year earlier, I dated someone I worked with. It ended badly enough that I learned what it felt like to see heartbreak at the coffee machine. After that, I made a promise to myself: no romance with anyone who could complicate my daily life. And nobody complicated my daily life more than Tessa Morgan. That Friday, we were hosting what she called the world's smallest dinner party, which meant 4 people, 2 folding chairs, 1 questionable lasagna, and Tessa insisting that our apartment had charm, when what it really had was 1 window that stuck and a refrigerator that hummed like it knew government secrets. Our friends Marcus and Nina sat at the little table near the window. Marcus worked with me. Nina knew Tessa from college. They had been dating for 3 months and had already become unbearable in the way happy couples are when they start sharing desserts and inside jokes in public. Tessa had spent the afternoon setting the table with mismatched plates and tiny candles she found at a thrift store. "You know," I said, watching her light one, "this is how apartment fires start." She blew out the match and gave me a look. "That's why I live with a man who owns a fire extinguisher and reads instruction manuals for fun." I read one manual. You highlighted it. It was poorly organized. She smiled and something in my chest folded over on itself. She was wearing a rust-colored satin blouse tucked into dark jeans, her hair pinned loosely at the back of her neck, a few strands escaping like they'd negotiated independence. The color made her skin look warm, her eyes darker. I noticed too much: the shine of her lip gloss, the small silver ring on her thumb, the way she reached around me for the corkscrew and didn't move away quickly enough. For 1 second, her arm brushed mine. It wasn't even a touch worth reporting to anybody. But I felt it all the way down my spine. "Careful, Hayes," she murmured. "With what?" Her eyes flicked to my face. "Whatever thought just walked across your forehead." I grabbed the corkscrew like it had personally offended me. "I was thinking the lasagna might be dry." "No, you weren't." Marcus from the table coughed into his fist. "For the record, nobody at this table believes either of you about anything." "Eat your salad," I told him. Nina grinned. "I'm just saying, the tension in here is giving the candles performance anxiety." Tessa laughed first. I tried not to, which lasted half a second. That was the problem with her. She could make embarrassment feel like a private joke instead of a public execution. Dinner was good. Better than good. Tessa had overdone the garlic bread, I had underdone the salad dressing, and Marcus somehow told a story about a client asking if windows could be more emotional. We laughed until the apartment felt warmer than the candles could explain. Then Nina asked how Tessa and I met. Online listing, I said at the exact same time Tessa said, he interviewed me like I was applying to handle classified documents. I pointed my fork at her. You brought references. You asked for references. Because the last applicant said he practiced indoor axe throwing. He had hobbies. He had holes in his previous walls. Tessa leaned back, smiling at me over the rim of her wine glass. You were very serious that day. Button-down shirt, little spreadsheet. You asked if I had strong feelings about dishwasher loading. I still stand by that question. You looked terrified when I said forks go handle down. Because that is how people lose fingers. Nina set her chin in her hand. And yet, here you are, domestic bliss. I nearly choked on my wine. Tessa didn't. She just looked at me. Not joking this time. Something passed between us then, quick and quiet. The room kept moving around it, but I felt the shift. Her smile softened. Mine disappeared. For a second, she looked like she wanted to ask me something she'd been carrying for a while. Then Marcus ruined it by reaching for the bread and knocking his napkin to the floor. I bent to grab it. Tessa reached at the same time. Our hands met under the table. Her fingers were warm, slender, still. Neither of us moved. Above us, Nina said something to Marcus, but it blurred out. Tessa's eyes lifted to mine from beneath the edge of the table, and there was no roommate rule down there. No rent, no separate shelves in the fridge. Just her hand under mine and a question I was suddenly tired of not answering. I let go first. Of course I did. Because I was responsible. Or scared. Those look the same if you dress them nicely. After dinner, Marcus and Nina moved to the couch with their wine while Tessa and I cleared plates in the kitchen. It was barely 8:30. The sky outside was still a deep summer blue, the kind that made the city look less tired than it was. Tessa stood beside me at the sink, shoulder almost touching mine. You ran, she said quietly. I scraped lasagna into the trash. From what? Under the table. I kept my eyes on the plate. I retrieved a napkin. Very bravely. Caleb. My name sounded different when she said it like that. Not teasing, not casual. Like she had found the hinge in me. I looked over. She was close enough that I could see a tiny dot of flour near her collarbone. I had the stupid urge to brush it away with my thumb. Instead, I said, we're roommates. Her expression tightened for half a second. I know where I sleep. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. We stood there with the faucet running between us like a bad excuse. Then Marcus called from the living room, are you two negotiating custody of the plates? Tessa looked away first, and something about that made me feel like I'd done more than avoid a moment. I'd hurt her. I reached for a towel. Tess. She turned too fast. Her elbow hit the bottle. Red wine tipped from the counter. I watched it happen in slow motion. The dark splash arced, caught the light, and landed directly across my chest, soaking into my white shirt like a wound. Marcus made a strangled sound. Nina whispered, oh my God. Tessa froze. Then she looked at me. At my shirt? At the wine spreading down my chest. And that smirk appeared. Not cruel, not careless. Something braver than both. Guess you'll have to take it off, she said. The room went dead silent. My heart hit once, hard. I stared at her, waiting for the laugh, the apology, the quick retreat into safe roommate humor. None came. Tessa stepped closer, took the towel from my hand and pressed it lightly against my chest. Through the wet cotton, her fingers rested over my heartbeat. Her voice dropped so only I could hear it. It wasn't an accident, Caleb. For 3 full seconds, I forgot we had guests. I forgot Marcus and Nina were sitting 10 feet away with wine glasses suspended midair, probably reconsidering every dinner invitation they'd ever accepted. All I could feel was Tessa's hand on my chest. The towel was between us. So was my ruined shirt. So were 8 months of pretending we were reasonable adults who split utility bills, and never noticed each other coming out of the shower in a towel. But her fingers were right over my heart, and my heart, traitorous thing, was practically knocking back. It wasn't an accident, I repeated. Tessa's smirk flickered. For 1 second, I saw the nerves underneath it. No. Behind us, Marcus cleared his throat. Should we evacuate? Nina stood so fast her chair squeaked. Yes, we should definitely evacuate. Tessa's eyes didn't leave mine. I should have said something smooth, something clever. Something like the kind of man who had not spent months lying awake because he heard her laughing at videos in the next room and wanted to be the reason. Instead, I said, "You spilled wine on me on purpose?" Her eyebrows lifted. That's the part you're focusing on. I liked this shirt. You own 6 identical white shirts. They each have a different emotional tone. Nina grabbed her purse. Okay, that's adorable, and also we are leaving before this becomes something we need to lie about later. Marcus passed behind me and clapped a hand on my shoulder, carefully avoiding the wine stain. Proud of you, buddy. Terrified, but proud. I didn't do anything, I said. Marcus gave Tessa a look. Exactly. The door closed behind them 30 seconds later. The apartment seemed to shrink. The candles still burned on the table. The sink still ran until Tessa reached back and turned the faucet off. The sudden silence was so complete, I could hear someone laughing on the sidewalk below. Tessa lowered the towel. A red mark spread across my chest, dark and undeniable. She looked at it, then at me. I'll pay for dry cleaning. I think we're past laundry logistics. Are we? Her voice was light, but her face wasn't. She had crossed a line on purpose, and now she was waiting to see if I'd step forward or build a fence around it. I took the towel from her hand and dropped it on the counter. Why? I asked. She let out a short laugh. Because apparently subtle wasn't working. Tessa. What, you want a list? She folded her arms, then immediately unfolded them, like she didn't want to look defensive. Fine, because you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. Because I catch you smiling at my stupid notes on the almond milk. Because you always save me the corner piece of lasagna even though you pretend it's random. Because under the table tonight you held my hand for exactly 1.5 seconds and then acted like you'd touched a live wire. I swallowed. She stepped closer. And because when I asked you if you were running, you said, "We're roommates." Like that was the whole answer. Like I'm a couch or a lease agreement. You're not. Then what am I? That question landed harder than it should have. I looked at her, the flush in her cheeks, the stubborn tilt of her chin, the vulnerability she was trying to disguise as attitude. You're the person I look for when I come home, I said. Her lips parted. The confession surprised both of us. I dragged a hand through my hair, then immediately regretted it because I was still sticky with wine and nerves. You're the person who makes this apartment feel like somewhere I want to be. And yes, I look at you too much. And yes, I wanted to keep holding your hand under the table. Tessa went very still. But I don't want to mess this up. My voice dropped. I don't want you uncomfortable in your own home if this goes wrong. I don't want to be another guy you have to avoid in the kitchen. Her expression softened. Caleb, she said, do I look like I'm avoiding you? No. I spilled Merlot on your chest. I'm starting to understand the message. Good, because it was expensive. It was $9. Emotionally expensive. A laugh broke out of me, shaky and relieved. Tessa smiled, and there it was again, that thing she did, turning fear into warmth without pretending the fear wasn't there. Then her gaze dipped to my shirt. You really should take that off, though, she said. My pulse tripped. Tessa. What? It'll stain. You are deeply concerned about fabric. I'm an artist. I respect materials. You're trouble. Only with you. The words settled between us quieter than the jokes. I reached for the hem of my shirt. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't look away. That did something unreasonable to my breathing. I pulled the shirt over my head and dropped it into the sink. The cool air hit my skin. Wine had soaked through in patches, leaving faint red smears across my chest and ribs. Tessa's gaze moved over me, not coyly. honestly, like she was letting herself want what she'd been pretending not to see. You have pain on your shoulder, she said. It's pencil dust from work. You're lying. I am. It's probably coffee. She laughed softly, but her hands lifted. Can I? I nodded. She stepped in and touched my chest with the damp towel again, gentler this time. No audience, no dare. Just the two of us in the kitchen light while she cleaned wine off my skin with careful strokes. It was so intimate I almost couldn't stand it. Her knuckles brushed my ribs, my stomach tightened. Still think this is a bad idea? She asked. I think it's a risky idea. That wasn't the question. I looked down at her. Her face was close. Too close for roommates, not close enough for everything else. No, I said, I don't think it's bad. Her hand paused over my heart again. Then choose it, she whispered. Just for tonight. Don't solve the whole future, don't spreadsheet it. Just choose me back. Something in me gave way. Not all at once. Not recklessly. Like a locked door finally admitting it had been unlocked for months. I lifted my hand to her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath my palm, her breath catching at the touch. I choose you back, I said. Tessa's eyes shone. Then she rose on her toes and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. No crashing into cabinets, no movie soundtrack. Just her mouth on mine, soft at first, careful enough to ask. I answered by sliding my hand to the back of her neck and pulling her closer. She made a tiny sound against my lips. That sound undid me more than the wine, more than the smirk, more than 8 months of pretending. I kissed her like I'd been waiting to come home and had only just realized she was the door. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against my chin. My arms were around her waist. Her hands were flat against my bare chest, exactly where she had started this whole disaster. Okay, she whispered. I smiled into her hair. Okay? That was worth the Merlot. It was $9. Stop ruining the mood. I'm shirtless and sticky in the kitchen. I'm doing my best. She laughed, and I felt it against my skin. Then, because apparently I was done being sensible in small ways, I said, Have dinner with me tomorrow. She leaned back. We just had dinner. With Marcus and Nina and emotional windows. A date then? My thumb brushed her waist. A date. Her smile turned slow and bright. Yes. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the rent, not the rules, not the ruined shirt soaking in the sink. Just Tessa looking at me like I was finally where she'd wanted me, and me realizing I had been walking toward her all along. The morning after Tessa kissed me, I woke up at 6:40 with one clear thought. Do not make this weird. By 7, I had made it weird. I stood in the kitchen wearing a gray t-shirt, holding 2 mugs of coffee, staring at the refrigerator like it might provide legal counsel. Tessa's door was still closed. Usually she emerged around 7:15, hair messy, socks mismatched, face still half in a dream. Usually I pretended not to watch for her. Usually I did not have the taste of her mouth permanently installed in my memory. The door opened. I turned too quickly and sloshed coffee over my hand. Morning, Tessa said. She wore tiny blue shorts and an oversized sweatshirt that slipped off one shoulder. Her hair was piled on top of her head. She looked soft and sleepy and unfair. Morning, I said, then held out a mug. Coffee. She took it, eyes narrowing. Why do you look like you're defusing a bomb? I'm casual. You're holding your breath. I exhaled. Her mouth twitched. There he is. For a second, neither of us moved. We were standing in the same kitchen where she'd cleaned wine off my bare chest and asked me to choose her. Morning light made everything feel less dramatic and somehow more dangerous. Tessa took a sip of coffee. So, I repeated. Are we going to discuss the fact that you kissed me like a man with a serious lease violation? I believe you kissed me first. I initiated, you escalated. I responded enthusiastically. You almost knocked over the dish rack. It was poorly placed. She laughed into her mug and the knot in my chest loosened. Then she leaned her hip against the counter. Are you regretting it? The question was quiet. No, I said immediately. Her eyes searched mine. I set my mug down and stepped closer. Not for a second. The tension in her shoulders eased, but she tried to hide it by looking away. Good, because I have already mentally selected an outfit for tonight, and it would be annoying to waste that. A date outfit? A devastating date outfit. I should prepare myself? You should hydrate. I smiled. Noted. She lifted her mug again, but I caught her free hand before she could retreat. Her fingers curled into mine like they'd been waiting. We don't have to rush, I said, but I don't want to pretend yesterday didn't happen. Neither do I. Good. Her thumb brushed my knuckle. Does this mean I'm allowed to flirt with you openly now? You were doing it secretly before? I have been obvious for months. I thought you were just emotionally aggressive. That was flirting, Hayes. I laughed and she smiled, and suddenly the kitchen wasn't awkward anymore. It was ours, but different, charged, honest. She stepped close enough that her sweatshirt brushed my shirt. Can I have a good morning kiss? She asked. My heart did that stupid hard beat again. You're asking? I'm experimenting with being considerate. I support this phase. I bent and kissed her. It was softer than last night, slower, morning coffee warm. Her hand came to my chest, the same place it had rested over my heartbeat, and I felt her smile against my mouth. When she pulled back, her cheeks were pink. Okay, she said, you keep saying that after kissing me. It's because my brain loses vocabulary. Devastating outfit and speechless? I'm looking forward to tonight. She pointed at me. Careful, confidence is cute on you. Dangerous, but cute. I spent the rest of the day pretending to work. I drew 3 versions of the same lobby and deleted all of them. I missed a meeting question because I was thinking about the way Tessa had said good morning kiss, like it was something we could have again and again. At lunch, Marcus slid into the chair across from me wearing the expression of a man prepared to be insufferable. So, he said, no, you don't know what I'm going to say. I do. Fine, how was the shirt removal? I stared at him. He grinned. Congratulations. You look terrified and happy. That's healthy. I asked her on a date. His grin softened. Good. That was the thing about Marcus. He performed nonsense like a sport. But when something mattered, he knew how to put it down gently. You okay with the roommate part? He asked. I'm trying not to overthink it. You? I said trying. He snorted. Look, man, you can't architect feelings into a load-bearing wall. Sometimes you just stand in the room and see if it holds. I hated that he was right. That evening I came home with flowers, not roses. That felt like too much. Not grocery store daisies. That felt like panic. I bought a small bunch of orange tulips because they reminded me of the blouse she'd worn the night before. Tessa was in the living room adjusting an earring when I walked in. My brain stopped. Her devastating outfit was a black dress with thin straps and a soft skirt that hit above her knees. Simple. Dangerous. Her hair was down in loose waves and she wore red lipstick like a warning label. She turned. I forgot every practical sentence I had planned. Oh, I said. Her smile grew. That bad? That unfair. She glanced at the flowers and something tender moved across her face. Caleb. They're not emotionally expensive, I said, but they seemed like you. She took them carefully, as if I'd handed her more than tulips. Nobody's brought me flowers in years, she said. The vulnerability in her voice made me want to do ridiculous things, like buy every tulip in the city. You should have had more flowers, I said. She looked up at me then, all humor gone. You say things like that and expect me to remain normal? I'm starting to hope you don't. She set the flowers on the table and came closer. You look good. I changed shirts 4 times. I respect the effort. I almost wore the wine one for sentimental value. That shirt died bravely. It died because a beautiful woman assaulted it with Merlot. She had limited options. I held out my hand. Ready? Tessa looked at it, then slid her palm into mine. That small, public-feeling gesture in our private apartment did something to me. It wasn't just flirting anymore, it was a step. We went to a little Italian place 3 blocks away, the kind with candles jammed into old bottles and tables so small our knees kept touching. Tessa ordered pasta with cream sauce and stole olives from my plate. I pretended to protest. She pretended to believe me. Halfway through dinner, she aimed her fork at me. Tell me why you were so scared. I knew what she meant. I looked down at my glass. My last relationship was with someone from work. When it ended, it didn't stay private. People picked sides. Every normal day became a reminder that I'd been stupid. You weren't stupid for wanting someone. I was stupid for ignoring every warning sign. Tessa's expression softened. I'm not her. I know. Do you? I met her eyes. Yes, but I needed to say the fear out loud so it doesn't run the whole thing. She reached across the tiny table and took my hand. This thing between us, she said, doesn't have to be reckless just because it's real. My throat tightened. What do you want it to be? I asked. She looked nervous then, but she didn't let go. Honest. Slow enough that we don't ruin home. Serious enough that we don't insult what this is. I turned my hand and laced our fingers together. I can do honest, I said. And serious? With you? I brushed my thumb over hers. I'm already in trouble. Her smile was small and shining. After dinner, we walked home slowly, shoulders bumping. At our building door, she stopped instead of going in. What? I asked. I'm deciding something. Should I worry? Probably. Then she stepped close, grabbed the front of my jacket, and kissed me under the flickering porch light. This kiss wasn't careful. It was warm and sure, her body leaning into mine, my hands settling at her waist as if they belonged there. A car passed. Someone laughed down the block. I didn't care. Tessa kissed me like she'd decided the world could watch if it wanted. When she pulled away, her lipstick was smudged. I was ridiculously proud of that. She touched my mouth with her thumb. Now we go upstairs and act mature. I have never wanted to be less mature in my life. She grinned. Good. But slow, remember? I kissed her thumb. Slow. Her gaze darkened for half a heartbeat. Then she took my hand and led me inside. We were halfway up the stairs when she whispered, For the record, I'm still glad I ruined your shirt. I squeezed her hand. For the record, I said, I'm starting to think it was my favorite shirt. Slow lasted exactly 4 days. To be clear, we were still respectable. Mostly. We did not tumble dramatically into bed and destroy the roommate agreement in a blaze of poor judgment. We did not start making out against every surface in the apartment, though Tessa did once look at the pantry door and say, structurally speaking. I said, don't bring architecture into this. She said, I'm just respecting your interests. The problem was, slow did not mean distant. Slow meant her bare foot sliding against mine under the coffee table while we watched a movie. Slow meant her sitting beside me on the couch, then somehow half on me by the second episode. Slow meant brushing my teeth next to her at night and trying not to lose my mind when she leaned around me to spit and her hip pressed my thigh. Slow meant knowing exactly how she tasted and not kissing her every time she laughed. Actually, that last part was a lie. I kissed her all the time. On Wednesday morning, she was making toast in those fuzzy socks that had been a threat to my sanity since move-in day. I came in, saw her hair twisted up with a pencil, saw the little line between her eyebrows as she tried to scrape burnt crumbs off the edge, and just stopped. She glanced over. What? Nothing. That is your deeply suspicious voice. I don't have a deeply suspicious voice. You have 7 voices. Work voice, roommate voice, fake casual voice, hungry voice. Hungry voice? It's very serious. I crossed the kitchen and slipped my arms around her waist from behind. She went still for half a second, then relaxed back into me. That one, she murmured. What one? The voice you use when you're about to kiss me. I pressed my mouth to the side of her neck. Her breath caught. The toast popped up like it was shocked. Tessa laughed, but it came out unsteady. Caleb. I'm making breakfast. You are absolutely not. I'm improving morale. She turned in my arms, her hands sliding up my chest. You're making it very hard to remember my schedule. What's on your schedule? Photo shoot at 10, editing at 1, pretending not to think about you at 2. That last one seems inefficient. I'm bad at it. I kissed her then, because I was bad at restraint when she looked at me like that. Her fingers curled into my shirt, and for a few warm seconds, the kitchen disappeared around us. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Tessa pulled back, smiling against my mouth. Hungry voice, responsible phone. I hate technology. You design buildings on a computer, and every day it betrays me. She nudged me toward the counter. Answer. It was a message from my landlord. Inspection Friday. Need access to both bedrooms. Also, reminder, no unapproved occupants or sublets. I frowned. Tessa read my face. What? I showed her. She blinked. Well, I'm approved. I sign things. I know. So why do you look like the refrigerator just confessed to murder? Because my first thought had been ridiculous and immediate. If we were dating, did that change something? If this went wrong, who moved out? If the landlord saw her camera gear in the living room and decided to be difficult, would Tessa lose the home she'd made here? My brain had found a ladder and climbed straight into disaster. Tessa's smile faded. You're doing it again. Doing what? Trying to solve the whole future before breakfast. I set the phone down. I just don't want anything to make you feel unstable here. My home isn't unstable because you kissed my neck near a toaster. That is not a sentence I expected to hear this year. She took my hand. Talk to me. That was the new rule we were trying. Instead of retreating into jokes or spreadsheets, we talked. I hated how well it worked. If we date and it gets complicated, I said, you're the one who moved into my apartment. I don't want there to be some invisible power imbalance. I don't want you to ever feel like this place is more mine than yours. Her eyes softened in a way that made my chest ache. Caleb, she said, that is both very sweet and extremely you. I'm serious. I know. She squeezed my hand. So let's make it clear. This is my home too. If we ever need space, we say so. If one of us panics, we say so. If you start acting noble and weird, I reserve the right to spill another beverage on you. Please choose water next time. No promises. I laughed to spite myself. Then she rose on her toes and kissed me, slow and grounding. There, she whispered. Still stable? Barely. Good. Friday's inspection turned out to be nothing. The landlord walked through, complained about the window that had stuck since before either of us lived there, praised Tessa's framed photos in the hallway, and left smelling faintly of peppermint gum. I should have been relieved. Instead, I found Tessa in her room afterward, standing in front of a half-packed camera bag, staring at nothing. I knocked on the doorframe. Hey. She looked over. Hey. You okay? Yeah. I waited. She made a face. Don't use patient silence on me. It's my most annoying skill. She sat on the edge of her bed. It's stupid. Then tell me, stupid. Her room looked like her mind. Organized chaos. Photo prints clipped to a wire above her desk. A stack of old art books. A chipped yellow mug full of memory cards. Her bedspread was dark green, rumpled at the corner like she'd been sitting there twisting it. I sat beside her, leaving an inch of space. She stared at that inch, then bumped her knee into mine. I've had to start over a lot, she said. After college, after bad jobs, after my parents sold the house I grew up in. I'm good at packing fast. I hate that I'm good at it. I turned toward her. When the landlord texted, she continued, I know it was nothing. But part of me thought, of course, here comes the catch. Here comes the reason I can't keep the good thing. My throat tightened. You're not a temporary good thing to me, I said. Her eyes flashed to mine. I reached for her hand. I don't mean we have to rush. I mean, I'm not treating this like some convenient apartment flirtation. I don't want you because you're nearby. You're nearby, and somehow that became the best part of my life. Tessa's face changed. Not a smile, not yet. Something more fragile. You can't just say that while sitting on my bed, she whispered. I can move to the chair. She laughed, but her eyes were wet. Idiot. You're idiot? The question slipped out too honestly. Her fingers tightened around mine. If you want the job. I do. She leaned forward and kissed me. It started soft, but the softness didn't last. She climbed into my lap with a certainty that knocked the breath out of me, her knees on either side of my thighs, her hands in my hair. I held her waist, feeling the warmth of her through her dress, the quick rise and fall of her breathing matching mine. Tessa, I murmured against her mouth. I know, she said. Slow. I rested my forehead against hers, fighting for sanity. I'm trying to be honorable. You're very annoying when you're honorable. You said honest and slow. I did. She kissed the corner of my mouth, and I meant it. So did I. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Stay here tonight? My pulse went wild. She saw it and smiled gently. To sleep, Caleb. Actual sleep. Maybe some irresponsible kissing first, but clothes on. Door open if that makes your noble heart feel better. I touched her cheek. Are you asking because you're scared to be alone after the inspection thing? No, her voice steadied. I'm asking because I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up knowing you didn't disappear back into roommate mode. That reached straight through me. Yes, I said. Her smile was small and radiant. That night we brushed our teeth shoulder to shoulder. We argued over which side of her bed was better. She claimed the left because the moon likes me. I said that wasn't evidence. She said romance was allergic to cross-examination. Then we lay down facing each other in the dim light from her window. For a while we only looked. No performance, no jokes. Just Tessa's hand tucked between us, my fingers tracing the silver ring on her thumb. I'm scared too, I admitted. Of me? Of how much I'm not scared of you. Her eyes softened. She moved closer until her forehead touched mine. Then we'll be careful with each other. I kissed her once, slow and certain. Then I wrapped my arm around her, and she tucked herself against my chest like she belonged there. In the dark, just before sleep, she whispered, Caleb. Yeah. If you ever ruin one of my shirts, I expect equal drama. I smiled into her hair. Deal. I learned something important that first night in Tessa's bed. She stole blankets like a criminal. Not subtly, not accidentally. At some point around 3 in the morning, I woke up cold and found her wrapped in the comforter like a triumphant burrito. One bare foot hooked over my shin as if to keep me from escaping. Tess, I whispered. Nothing. Tessa. She made a sleepy sound and tightened her grip on the blanket. You said we'd be careful with each other, I murmured. Her eyes stayed closed. I'm carefully warm. I laughed quietly and she opened one eye. You're laughing at me. I'm freezing. She considered that, then lifted one edge of the blanket. Fine. Shared custody. I slid closer, and she tucked herself against me with a sigh that felt like trust. That was how we began, not perfectly. Not like people in movies who never had rent due or bad moods or toothpaste disagreements. We still got irritated. She still left camera lenses on my desk. I still reorganized the dishwasher after she loaded it, which she called romantic sabotage. But we talked. When I overthought, she called me on it. When she got scared and started pretending she didn't need anyone, I reached for her instead of letting her drift. We made rules, then broke the silly ones and honored the important ones. No using "we're roommates" as a shield. No disappearing into silence. No pretending a kiss didn't change the weather in a room. A week after the wine incident, Marcus and Nina came over again. Marcus arrived carrying a bottle of red wine and wearing the grin of a man who had planned his joke days in advance. For the shirt memorial, he announced. Tessa took the bottle from him. Bold of you to bring ammunition into my home. Our home, I said without thinking. The room went briefly quiet. Tessa looked at me. I looked back. It was such a small phrase. 2 words. But her face softened like I'd handed her keys to something larger than the apartment. Our home, she repeated. Nina, who had emotional radar sharper than any person alive, pressed a hand to her chest. I'm fine. This is fine. Nobody look at me. Marcus whispered, Are we still allowed to sit down, or is the air too tender? Tessa threw a napkin at him. Later that night, after they left, she found me at the sink washing glasses. She came up behind me and slid her arms around my waist. You set our home, she murmured. I did. On purpose? I turned off the water and faced her. Yes? Her eyes searched mine. Careful, Hayes, that sounded serious. It was. For once, she didn't joke. I dried my hands, then took hers. I know we said slow, I still want slow, but slow doesn't mean uncertain. No? No. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. I'm certain about you. Her breath caught. I had been afraid of that word for so long, certain. It sounded like a promise with no exit. But standing there with Tessa, in our tiny kitchen, with the humming refrigerator and the stubborn window and the ghost of spilled wine between us, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like the truth finally standing upright. I'm certain about you too, she whispered. I kissed her then, and she smiled against my mouth, and something settled in me that had been restless for years. 6 months later, the ruined white shirt was framed in our hallway. That was Tessa's idea. To be fair, it was washed, mostly. A faint blush-colored stain remained over the chest, shaped vaguely like a country no mapmaker would claim. She put it in a simple black frame with a tiny label beneath it that read, The Incident. I told her it was ridiculous. She said, It's our origin story. I said, Our origin story is that you committed laundry violence. She said, And you fell in love with me. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because by then, I had told her I loved her exactly once. It had happened on an ordinary Tuesday. She was sitting on the floor surrounded by photo prints, rejecting them one by one with brutal commentary. Too posed, too cold, weird elbow. Why do hands exist? Caleb, do you think this one says melancholy or unpaid invoice? I looked at her, cross-legged in my old sweatshirt, hair falling into her eyes, talking to herself like the world was a frame she could fix if she loved it enough. And I said, I love you. She went completely still. A print slid from her hand. Then she looked up at me, eyes wide and shining. You can't say that while I'm having an artistic crisis. I can say it again later. You'd better. I love you, I said again anyway. She crawled across the floor, climbed into my lap and kissed me until I forgot what I'd been nervous about. Then she whispered it back against my mouth. After that, the words became part of the apartment. Not constant. Not careless. Just there, tucked into mornings, folded into good nights, written once on a sticky note attached to my lunch container. Architects need carbs. I love you. Don't be weird about it. By the following spring, Tessa's photography business had grown enough that we turned my old bedroom into her studio and officially made mine ours. The first night after we moved her bed out, we stood in the doorway of the new studio, looking at the empty walls. She held a mug of tea in both hands. This feels big. It is big. What if I mess it up? The studio? Everything. I step behind her and wrap my arms around her waist. Then we fix it, or repaint, or buy better shelves. She leaned back against me. That's your answer to emotional uncertainty? Shelving? Good shelving prevents chaos. She laughed softly, but then she turned in my arms, serious again. Do you ever miss when it was simpler? She asked. Before the wine? I looked down at her, at the woman who had turned my careful life into something warmer and braver, at the person who had asked me to choose her and then kept choosing me back in 100 ordinary ways. No, I said. It wasn't simpler. It was lonelier. Her eyes filled. I kissed her forehead. I like this version better. The version with shared rent, shared blankets, and framed evidence of my crimes? Especially that version. She set down her mug, took my hand, and pulled me into the middle of the empty studio. There should be music, she said. There is no music. Then hum. I'm not humming. She lifted an eyebrow. I hummed badly. She laughed so hard she had to lean into me, And then we were dancing in a room that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. No furniture, no audience, no performance. Just Tessa barefoot on the floor, my hand at her back, her cheek against my chest. Right over the place where the wine had landed, right where her hand had rested when everything changed. And I remember thinking that love didn't always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it moved in quietly, labeled the almond milk, burned the toast, stole the blankets, and waited for you to stop being afraid. Sometimes it spilled red wine on your shirt and smirked like it knew your whole life was about to begin. What would you have done if your roommate accidentally spilled wine on your shirt and then told you to take it off? Have you ever experienced something similar where one bold moment changed everything? Tell your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.